Welcome to a special preview episode here on the House of Hoosier podcast, presented by the Field 68 Podcast Network. I'm Ian Plaskoff, joined by Noah Gerkey, and for the first time all year, we're joined by another special guest. It's Colin McMahon of the Hoosier.com. It's Indiana's On3 affiliate. Colin, happy to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Excited to talk some rivalry basketball between Purdue and Indiana. It should certainly be an entertaining matchup. Obviously, Purdue coming off of a loss and Indiana's coming off of a loss as well. Both two top 10 opponents, and both are looking to get back on track. Obviously, kind of different sides of the spectrum. Purdue looking to secure its spot at the top of the field, Indiana looking to secure its spot in the field. But yeah, I mean it's a high level game, and obviously with a rivalry game, it's definitely going to be entertaining.
It's been a little while since Indiana's seen the floor. Plenty of time for rest and getting injured players more healthy. And the last time they played was in Champaign on Sunday. They're not going to play again until we're recording this on Thursday. It'll be tomorrow, and it's a night game too, or a little later in the day. So you have more, it's like another half day of rest. I think that's important. I think that's huge to get these guys reset, get them on the practice courts, and get them healthy because this is going to be a physical game. And going into an environment like Mackey, you have to be at the top of your game physically and mentally.
Yeah, Mackey is one of those places that no matter how good a basketball you're playing, you always feel like you got to earn it by 5 to 7 more points. Like that's just what it is. So Indiana, getting those extra days, getting that back under yourself. They've struggled on the road at times this year, but just having the energy and having the time to study some film over Purdue while Purdue's just coming off a matchup against Michigan. Maybe they haven't looked as much to Indiana. That could be a huge factor because they've got film on Purdue, and Purdue had to take their focus to a number one team in the country. It didn't go their way, but that was where their focus lied. And so now Indiana has had a little bit more time to prepare, and it's going to be intriguing on Friday night.
How similar do you guys see Purdue to the Illinois team that Indiana just played in Champaign?
I do think they're pretty different. Not only because Purdue has dominant bigs, but Illinois' bigs can really stretch the floor, right? When you have TKR and Oscar Clough who are going to play near the basket most of the time, they're going to try to post up, they're going to try to score in the paint. That's a lot different than what Illinois' bigs can do. And I think that was a real problem for Indiana on Sunday, where you had Merkovich, who, obviously is a forward and can get, rebounds. Obviously, we saw a lot of offensive rebounding on Sunday, but he can stretch the floor, he can shoot it, right? And even if they're not scoring beyond the arc, it stretches Indiana's defense out, where its forwards are going to have to go out. Reed Bailey and Sam Alexis and Tucker DeVries are going to have to go out towards the 3 point arc. And it just opens up the inside. It opens up the painted area for those offensive rebounds, for those quick passes, for driving to the rim. And that's exactly what we saw on Sunday, where Indiana just did not have the help, did not have the reinforcements to guard down low. And Illinois really took advantage of that. I mean, the offensive rebounding was kind of the highlight of it all. But even when Keaton Wagler, who is a guard, was driving towards the rim, there really wasn't any help because a lot of times their bigs were stretched out. And so Indiana's bigs on defense were stretched out as well. And it was kind of just a domino effect that resulted in a 20-point loss. And, a fine effort. I think the effort was there, but you just kind of saw that Illinois was an awful matchup. And I don't think Purdue presents the same type of challenge. And that's what we saw in the first meeting, where Purdue obviously had the advantage inside, but they did not dominate. Indiana held its own. And that's why you saw the Hoosiers win at Assembly Hall last month.
You took the big approach. I'll take the guard approach too. Purdue doesn't have a lockdown guard like Kylan Boswell, who's going to chase Lamar Wilkerson around the floor for 38-ish minutes. So that's one of those things as well. They also don't have a go-to scorer like a Keaton Wagler if they need to, like a give it to him, let's hope it goes in towards the end of the shot clock. Braden Smith could be that guy, but he hasn't really shown it over the last few games. So while Illinois' bigs can stretch the floor, Purdue doesn't really have the guards that Illinois does either. I don't think they have the same matchup wise defensively to guard a Lamar Wilkerson for 38 minutes. I don't think they've got the go-to scoring punch that you have to be concerned about in Keaton Wagler. So I think these two teams are mightily different. They're both very successful in the styles that they play. Purdue's going to pound the glass just as much as Illinois did, but it's not going to be because of long rebounds. It's just going to be because they're just bigger and probably more physical than Indiana, like they were in the first matchup.
Yeah, I saw a little conversation. That's why I prompted this about like how Illinois and Purdue are kind of similar in that they're top tier Big Ten teams. They have good bigs, they have guards that complement it, but they do it in different ways. And I'm in agreement. I think Purdue is a much better matchup for Indiana than Illinois. Illinois might have said this earlier. It might be the worst possible matchup for this Indiana team, at least in the Big Ten. I don't know, Colin, do you agree with that?
I would, but you have to think Michigan is going to be the worst matchup overall because they're just the best team, right? Like obviously, based on play style, you could say Illinois' play style is the least conducive to Indiana having success. But Michigan is just far and away the best team in the league. I mean, you saw that on Tuesday where Mackey Arena, even from watching on the television broadcast, was deafening. I mean, it was incredible how loud it was. And from reporters that were in the building, what they posted on social media, I mean, they were amazed. You saw Michigan's players. Elliot Cadeau said Mackey Arena was louder and more intimidating than Cameron Indoor Stadium, right? And so when Michigan can go in there and dominate Purdue, and I know the final score ended up being kind of close. The final score ended up being an 11-point game, but Michigan was up by 20 in the first half. I mean, they kind of manhandled Purdue in their own building. And that's not the first time Purdue got manhandled in its own building. I mean, Iowa State in the non-conference handed Purdue its largest home loss in program history. Keaton Wagler went into Mackey and dropped 46 points and beat Purdue in its own building. And so Purdue has shown weakness in Mackey Arena, which is surprising considering how intimidating it can be. And they have, an incredible student section, an incredible fan atmosphere. I mean, it's really loud, but teams have proven that that might not matter as much as we think it does. And we saw it a couple years ago with Jalen Hood Schifino against a Purdue team that was a 1 seed. They may have lost in the first round of the NCAA tournament, but I mean, they were the best team in the Big Ten that year. And, I think this all goes to show that teams can go into Mackey Arena and win. Does that mean that this Indiana team can go into Mackey Arena and win? Probably not, but there's certainly a chance. And honestly, I do think there's a better chance of Indiana winning on Friday than there was last Sunday when they went to the State Farm Center in Champaign, Illinois.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back to that Michigan game that Purdue just played on Tuesday. It really felt like every time Purdue did something well, something else went wrong, or Michigan did something else better. And Michigan shot 53% from the field. They were 13 of 23 from three-point range. That's 57% for you math folks out there. Um, Rebounding 39-31, solid advantage for Michigan over a good rebounding team in Purdue. Eight total steals and blocks, 13 offensive rebounds for Purdue. I mean, for Michigan, Purdue had 14 actually. But it was just a complete domination from the start. And I was watching that game and I was like, this crowd is insane every time Michigan comes down the floor, but it just does not seem to matter. So I'm like, that's just mental fortitude on Michigan's part, but I don't know how that'll work with this Indiana team. But how much does the crowd really impact teams at Mackey? And this year, like you said, it hasn't proven to be the same animal that it has been in recent years.
I think Mackey obviously always impacts you, at least in a little way. Whether you accept the challenge of going in and you like make it upon yourself, like Yaxel Landenborg did, he became the villain, I suppose, and just embraced the hate that Mackey brought him. Elliot Cadeau is egging on the crowd. You can go with that approach, or you can be like, this place is really loud. This is going to be tough. And just immediately go that way from the jump. It's sort of the mentality you have to have because once you look at these teams having success at Mackey, you start to believe that you can too until you step into that building and it's that loud again. So I think it's a matter of it. The crowd always matters. It's a matter of how you attack it, I think, going forward, because the crowd can help, but this Purdue team is not as good as the Purdue teams we've seen in the past few years. And so at the end of the day, you're playing against a team lined up across from you with a ball and two baskets. No matter how loud it is around you, this Purdue team's not the same team we're used to seeing from a Matt Painter team. So that's another big story, though.
Yeah, I want to go back to, when Indiana and Purdue played for the first time this year, didn't have to worry about the crowd. In fact, the crowd was the best home Indiana crowd that we've seen all year long. It was a 5-point win for Indiana, 72 to 67 over Purdue. It felt like a game that was dominated more than that 5-point margin by Indiana, and there wasn't, I don't know how much Purdue led. I don't have that in front of me, but I don't feel like it was very much. It was Lamar Wilkerson and Nick Dorn that stood out in that game. Wilkerson with 19 on 7 of 18 shooting. He had 7 rebounds, 3 assists as well. Nick Dorn had 18 points, 4 of 9 from 3. And if you're Indiana, you really need to see more of that kind of Nick Dorn come Friday. Tucker DeVries didn't score double digits. Sam Alexis had 2 points in 14 minutes. Reed Bailey actually played well, 9 points, 3 of 4 from the field. But you look at Connor Enright also, we have to mention, had 8 points and locked down Braden Smith for 40 minutes and had 8 assists as well. This is not the same kind of Indiana team that's been playing as of late. Nick Dorn's gone cold. Reed Bailey has not played as well as he did in this game. Connor Enright has had more of a role in some ways, and Tate Connerway's back. So we'll see how that plays a role. And then Tucker DeVries has been up and down. So the big question is, what kind of Indiana team are we going to see on Friday? Is it this kind of team that beat Purdue in a well-rounded affair, or is it going to be the Lamar Wilkerson, Connor Enright, and who can supplement them kind of team against Purdue on Friday?
I think that Indiana needs to get more out of Nick Thorne. I think that's kind of the key here. Aside from not getting dominated inside, if two things happen, one being if Indiana can hold its own on the inside, and that's Reed Bailey and Sam Alexis, specifically on the defensive end. Obviously, those two scoring points is going to help. But I think on the defensive end, you saw against Michigan, Trey Kaufman-Renz scored 27 points, and that was because Michigan decided not to double inside. They decided to play one-on-one defense and kind of let Trey Kaufman get his, but not allow those kickouts to the guards or allow Braden Smith to kind of make magic with passes. And they kind of let Trey Kaufman-Renz get the ball on the block, put it up for two, and Michigan would end up kind of dominating on the offensive end. That's how they won. Indiana, I hesitate to say they should play one-on-one defense just because Trey Kaufman's 27 points could turn into 30 or more, just because Indiana doesn't have the same inside presence that Michigan does. But I do think that not doubling is probably going to be the best course of action. And so that kind of puts a lot of weight on Reed Bailey and Sam Alexis. But if they can hold their own, and Purdue's going to get points inside. That's a given. It's just about limiting it and make sure it doesn't spiral out of control. If that happens and you get Nick Dorn going, he had an awful game against Illinois, and he's had some pretty bad performances of late. He was great in LA against UCLA and then against USC, and then that kind of started a downward trajectory where he only scored 1 point against Illinois. If they can get him going, if he can score 10, 15 points to complement Lamar Wilkerson, who, is it a given that he scores 20 points a game? It almost seems like a given that he's going to score 20 or close to it at the way he's playing. And Brad Underwood said after the Illinois game, hey, Lamar got 21. We'll live with that, which is, crazy to say that you're going to live with someone scoring 21 points on you. But that really is the case because Indiana's lack of scoring otherwise, 21 points from Lamar Wilkerson is fine. But if you get Dorn going, if you get Dorn getting 15, if you get Tucker DeVries getting 10 or 15, if you can have Sam Alexis play at the level where he was playing at against Wisconsin, he was a game changer. And against Oregon, he played really well. And at the start of the Illinois game, he played really well. And so if you can get kind of the supporting cast going, along with not getting dominated in the paint. I think that's a recipe for success. And that doesn't mean Indiana is going to win, but Indiana's only goal here should be to make it close late and then see what happens. That's what happened last year, right? Indiana was up by one with 30 seconds to go. Trey Kaufman ran, hit a hook shot. Purdue went up by one. Miles Rice couldn't go down the floor and score 2 points. If Trey Kaufman run misses that hook shot, Indiana escapes Mackey with a win, and they probably make the tournament last year if they win that game. And so that ends up being the difference. This year, the tournament outlook is a little better, but this game could end up being the difference, right? You have an opportunity to pick up a major road win, something that Indiana doesn't really have. Beating UCLA on the road doesn't really hold the same luster that it did. UCLA is kind of falling off the rails here, but I think that it's a major opportunity and a couple things have to go right, but there is certainly a chance that Indiana can pull off an upset.
Looking at Purdue in this game, it was a really disjointed performance from this team. Trey Kaufman-Renn was the only really stable presence for this team. He had 23 points, 9 of 14 shooting, only 3 rebounds for him, though. Oscar Clough had 2. Fletcher Loyer was 3 for 10 from the field. Braden Smith didn't get going until late. He finished with 14 on 6 of 14 shooting. The bench only managed 12 points combined across 4 players. It really didn't feel, it kind of felt like what Indiana was against Illinois, where it was Trey Kaufman-Renn will get what he wants, and then everybody else will have to figure it out. Purdue didn't figure it out in this game, and it was a struggle for them to score points, especially from beyond the arc. They were 7 of 20. Um, Rebounding, they only out-rebounded Indiana by 2 on the defensive glass. On the offensive glass, only by 3. If this Purdue team this is kind of the struggle against Michigan too. Trey Kaufman-Renn got whatever he wanted, and everybody else kind of struggled. If Purdue does that back-to-back games, I think that gives Indiana a chance in this game, regardless of if it's at Mackey, regardless of if it's in West Lafayette. But if you prevent Braden Smith from being that top option when he has the ball, sure, he'll pass, he'll get his assists. If you can limit Fletcher Loyer from deep, like Indiana did in game one, and you let Trey Kaufman-Renn, to an extent, have what he wants, I think that could be a solid recipe for success.
I think the issue with Purdue is that Braden Smith hasn't been the same offensive player we've seen him be in the years past, whether it was trying to facilitate too much or not get his own, but I don't think he scored in the first half of the Michigan game. I think he waited until the last second half and still was like 4 of 13. Most of his points came from the free throw line. I think if Purdue's going to have success come March, they have to get a better Braden Smith. They have to. Plain and simple. He's just got to be better for them. He hasn't been their leading scorer in a game since uh, January 24th. And then before that, it was January 17th. He's been the leading scorer in 2 of their last like 9 games. He's got to go get his. He has to. He's their arguably best offensive player outside of Trey Kaufman-Renn. He just hasn't shown the confidence of wanting to go be that scorer that we've seen him be. He's really good in the mid range. He's a great distributor. He can get to the rim pretty good for somebody who's not very big at all. I think for Purdue, if they do make it just Trey Kaufman around on offense, Indiana's got a great shot because once Braden Smith gets hot or Fletcher Loyer is the biggest confidence player you've seen in college basketball, if he makes his first 2 shots, I don't know what he's shooting afterwards, but it's probably some of the best in the country. But if he misses his first 2, he's probably one of the worst shooters in the country. He's a pure confidence guy. But I think Braden Smith has to get going on offense for Purdue to have any success going in March because he's probably their second best offensive player, and he just hasn't looked the same. I don't. He's still battling the injury from the beginning of the year. He's talked about it in press conferences, but he just doesn't look comfortable at times.
Yeah, I've been watching Braden Smith and I've been thinking this is not the same Braden Smith that it should be in National Player of the Year contention again. Um, some have been saying he's been more focused on beating the assist record at Purdue than actually trying to win games, and sometimes that's what it looks like on the floor. He's still an insanely good player. Um, but he's just not playing the same way that he did last year and the year before.
Yeah, I you kind of beat me to it. I wanted to touch on the assist thing, and I'm not making any formal accusations, but at times it seems that Braden Smith is passing up, driving to the basket, and instead passing it to somebody who might not have as good of a shot as he does. Now, obviously, I don't think it's at the forefront of his mind. Like when he's on the offensive side of the ball, he's not thinking, okay, I need to get an assist. I know he's still thinking we're going to score some points. That's what they're, you know, on the offensive side of the ball to do. But in the back of his mind, he might be thinking, okay, I'm close to 1,000 assists. I might even beat the assist record if things go my way because he's a little bit of a ways away. Uh, I'll look up exactly the numbers here, but he has to go a pretty long way to get those assists. 1,076 assists, and Braden Smith is just shy of 1,000. So he's going to have to get um, over 80 more assists in the rest of the season to pass that record. That's going to be tough considering you have five more regular season games, a couple Big Ten tournament games, and then who knows how many NCAA tournament games Purdue plays. And so he's going to have to get 8 to 10 assists consistently in order to break the record. And that's tough. Like that's not, I'm going to play how I play and I'll probably get it. No, you getting that many assists that many straight times in a row is going to take purpose and a a strive to do that. And I don't think that Braden Smith is necessarily thinking that every time he goes down the floor, like I said, but it's definitely in the subconscious. And I do wonder how much that's affecting him because his passing is still great. It just feels like his shot making and shot creating is kind of taking a down year. And he's critical to Purdue's success because obviously they don't have Zach Edey anymore. And the recipe with Zach Edey was I'm going to pass it to Zach Edey on the block. He's either going to turn around and shoot, or if the defense crashes in on him, he's going to pass it out for a wide open three. That was Purdue's game plan. That doesn't exist anymore. Trey Kaufman-Renn is obviously fantastic, but he's no Zach Edey, right? And so Braden Smith needs to make plays for them, and that's making plays for others, which he can do certainly well, probably the best in the country. And that also means making plays for himself, which is what has been lacking. And that's what was lacking in Assembly Hall, where, he scored in double figures for the first time in his career at Assembly Hall, but he still didn't have a great game. And so can he bounce back and play well against Indiana at Mackey Arena? Can he bounce back from a performance where he did score a bunch against Michigan? He did score 20 points, but he was outplayed by Elliot Cadeau for the large part of that game. And they lost by 11, and they were losing by 20 in the first half. And I think that game said a lot more about Purdue. And I think that this game on Friday will say a lot more about Purdue than it does Indiana. And some people might disagree with me, but if Indiana is a projected 10 seed, which I have them right now, and Purdue's a projected 2 seed, which I have them right now, if that 10 seed goes to play at a 2 seed, the 2 seed should win by double digits. So if Indiana loses by double digits, I don't think that really says that much about Indiana. Now, if they get blown out by 20, that's a different story. And if they keep it close, that's a different story. But, I think this game is a turning point for Purdue. If they lose, I think things could go south quickly. And, they're going to start dropping on the seed lines and they're going to start dropping in the Big Ten standings. There's a realistic chance that they don't get a top 4 seed and they don't get that. Now it's a quadruple bye, I suppose, in the Big Ten tournament because now they start on Tuesday. But, this is a big game, obviously for Indiana, but really a big game for Purdue.
For one thing with Purdue defensively, and it's been touched on at times this year, but I found a stat about it. When teams play Purdue, their 3-point percentage jumps over their season average. So Michigan shot 20% better than their season average. Illinois shot 11, Indiana shot 8, Penn State and UCLA also shot 8% better, and Iowa State shot 7% better. This Purdue team is a bad perimeter defensive team. Will that change? Because when you scout Indiana, you realize that 85% of what they do on offense is trying to hunt 3-point shots. Maybe that might change, but they could have scouted that in the first game, and Indiana shot 8% better than their season average as well. So this team, Purdue, is lacking still a defensive identity as well. We've talked about on offense how they got so many ways to attack you. Right now, they're struggling to guard, whether it's the perimeter, whether it's getting downhill. They're just struggling to find stops. And Indiana, when they played Purdue earlier, seemingly getting every look they wanted from behind the arc. Like the score made it look a lot closer, but it felt like every shot that Indiana took was a good shot in that contest. And Coach DeVries even talked about it at Illinois. He felt like they were getting good shots. They just weren't knocking them down. Well, they might be getting even better shots at Purdue the way that they guard the 3-point line. So I think that's another storyline to look out for is that teams just have success when playing against Purdue because of how they guard the three. They hedge ball screens, which leaves the slip wide open. They like to help on the weak side, which leaves your corner open when you drive. They just leave a lot of open looks from the perimeter.
Let's put this game into context. 5 games left for Indiana. This is one of five. Three quad one games. It goes Purdue on the road, then versus Northwestern next Tuesday, Michigan State at home, Minnesota at home, Northwestern, Michigan State, Minnesota, all at home. And you finish the season at Ohio State. So three quad one opportunities, 5 total games left. We've been revisiting this for the past couple of weeks, but depending on which games you win, you could win two and feel good. If you win three, you're feeling really good. And if you win two and those two are Northwestern and Minnesota and you drop all three quad ones, you probably need to pick up a win or two in the Big Ten tournament to feel a little bit better. But this is, in my eyes, I agree with you, Colin. I think this is definitely Purdue's game to lose. It's 8 p.m. primetime hoops in their building on Fox. They're favored heavily for good reason. But Indiana has shown fight all year. Indiana has shown that it can beat good teams, and it has beaten Purdue once already. Yes, it was at home, and it was different. Do I think Indiana will win? I don't know. I don't think that's a guarantee. But I think Indiana has the recipes to win. And if it puts those recipes together in the right way, I think they could win in Mackey. But even if Indiana doesn't win, there are still 4 great opportunities left on the board to solidify that resume as Indiana's about in the mid 30s in the Ken Palm in the net, around perennial tournament teams that should make it this year. 17 and 9, 8 and 7 in Big Ten play, just have to finish out strong.
Yeah, this is a team that right now is looking good for the NCAA tournament. Now, obviously, a lot can change. 5 games, things could really go south if you drop one of those quad three games. Because
Doctor, if you have severe stomach
one
pain
of
or
the biggest parts of this Indiana resume is that they don't have a quad three or quad four loss, and they only have one quad two loss. So you only have one loss outside of the first quadrant. And if Indiana drops a game to Northwestern or to Minnesota, then one of those key pillars of Indiana's resume goes away. Not only does it go away, you also take a brutal loss that will degrade all of the metrics. All of Indiana's metrics are going to go down. And instead of being in the 30s across the board, you might see them in the 40s across the board. And that's a big difference because that cut line is around 45, 46 for at large consideration. And so I think if you win those 2 quad 3 games, that makes you at least a 10-win Big Ten team and a 19-win overall team. And you just win one of the 3 quad 1 games. Obviously, the most likely would be at Ohio State, I would say. You could make the argument because it's at home, Michigan State, but I think Michigan State is miles better than Ohio State, and Ohio State's not known to have an intimidating home environment. So I think that Indiana is looking good, but they can't necessarily get that in their heads. They still need to go out and they need to win games, and they probably need to win 3 games. And if they win just two in the regular season, they definitely have to win a Big Ten tournament game because the way that the bracket is going to be this year, it's going to be Indiana's going to be the 9 or 10 seed, and then they're going to have to face the 16 or 15 seed in the Big Ten on Wednesday. The 9 and 10 seed used to be automatically on Thursday, and you would go up against an 8 or a 7, where a loss there isn't a bad loss. But if they lost in what would be the second round of the Big Ten tournament, Indiana's first game against the 16 or 15 seed in the conference, that would be another really bad loss. And Indiana would be out of the field at that point if they lost that game and they only won 2 games in the regular, 2 more games in the regular season. That means that they would be sitting with a 19-13 record with a couple of bad losses. That is not a tournament team. They would be out. Versus if they can get to 20 wins with a win in the Big Ten tournament and they sit at 20-12, and that's a big difference. I think 20 wins is a very big deal. And I think that while conference record is irrelevant, having a winning record, 11-9, you get so many quality wins in the Big Ten that I think Indiana would be safe with that resume. So 3 wins in the regular season would do it. 2 wins in the regular season plus a Big Ten tournament win, then it's close. Then you might get sent to Dayton. But if they beat Purdue, I don't think there's really any world where Indiana doesn't make the tournament based on the momentum they would generate from that. Obviously, if they end up losing the rest of their games after beating Purdue, that's a different story, but I don't see that happening. So I think it's kind of a deal where if you win on Friday, you can kind of start your travel plans for the NCAA tournament.
I think the Purdue game, every game is obviously important. The most important one on the schedule left is Ohio State because of how similar they are in the net. Similar they are record-wise, but Ohio State doesn't have a quad one win. They're 0-8 in the quad one. They're 6-1 in the quad two. But you look at their schedule, they have no easy task either. They've got Michigan State and Iowa on the road. They've got Purdue at home. So for them to pick up that win against Indiana is a bubble team going right at a bubble team. That's going to be like the game to see who gets the upper leg. And Indiana got some help last night with Auburn losing to Mississippi State. So Auburn was around that bubble line as well. That game is the most important one, but obviously, if you pick up one of the ones of Purdue and Michigan State and just take care of business, you're going to be fine. At the beginning of the year, we said 20 wins, 21 wins would get you into the field. That was our record prediction. I think we both predicted them to win around 20 games in the season, 10 or 11 wins in the Big Ten. They're right around that, and I don't think they're not in a bad spot right now by any means.
Purdue will kick off this stretch of 5 very important games with postseason conversations looming, and we'll see what happens. I'll be there with coverage. Colin, I'm assuming you'll be there.
I will be there, yeah.
And as we have learned this morning now, Noah, you'll be there too.
Be there as a fan, yeah, but back in the hometown, it'll be cool. I'm excited to go. It'll be exciting.
It'll be my first time in Mackey for a men's game. I went for a women's game last year. Super excited to go see what that's all about. That'll wrap it up here on the House of Hoosier. Hope you learned a little bit about this matchup with Indiana and Purdue that will take place on Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. It'll be broadcasted on Fox with the primetime hoops tag to it. Gus Johnson will be on the call for Fox. And we appreciate Colin McMahon for joining us for this preview. Colin, always a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, it was a good time. Purdue, Indiana. I mean, nothing better than that. I mean, some might argue there are better rivalries in the sport, but for us here, I don't think there is a better one. And this game has a lot of intrigue. A lot is riding on it. So, we'll have to see what happens, and it should definitely be a good one.
That'll wrap it up for the House of Hoosier podcast presented by the Field of 68 Podcast Network. We'll see you hopefully after Indiana feels better about its tournament hopes, and we'll get to the rest of the slate after Indiana